Greetings, this is a very strange Aeon. Welcome to my video. Warrior. So, you looked at the high magic world, Guild Wars 2, access to all sorts of powerful magical abilities, hyper, strange, steampunky tech, and decided, you know what I want? A hammer. I'm going to whack someone in the head with it. Well, you're playing fighter. You are a strange individual. Fighters are your traditional everyman, although that said, they are still seem pretty supernatural to me. I will give a warning for many people who stereotypically play a fighter. Guild Wars 2 doesn't really support the tank playstyle in the holding aggro of the enemy boss in the same way that many games do, and even if you would, I would not recommend Warrior for that role. Generally saying Guardian or Necromancer does it better. Warriors are pretty well-rounded characters, having relatively solid offense and defense, though by default they are not great at dishing out condition damage or healing, although with the recent addition of Staff, the latter one is changing quite a bit. The special mechanic is Adrenaline and Bursts. Generates adrenaline in combat, which it will then use to utilize a burst attack, which will vary depending on its weapon, but tends to be relatively powerful. Berserker. So, I have a question for you. Do your hands feel strangely painless? Can you move them with full flexibility and generally feel happy with life? Do you want to change that and have constant agony? Is RSI something you've always desired? Then I may have the class for you. Berserker probably has one of the highest APMs of any class in the game, and as such I tend to consider it just an RSI generator. It enhances its burst mechanic by getting the ability to go into a berserk frenzy when it hits full adrenaline. This in turn gives us access to special primal bursts, which can generate very quickly and constantly need to be clicked. The berserk will slowly tick down, but there are multiple abilities to maintain the berserk state while in combat. As such, berserkers tend to, unsurprisingly, want to stay in combat and stick there as much as possible. Retreat, dodging, those are for weaklings. Keep killing. Berserk also has the most condition options of any warrior. As I said before, generally warriors do not have good condition options, but it has access to Torch, which is a condition weapon, as well as many of the primal bursts being more condition oriented. It doesn't have to play condition, but it can. Berserkers are normally a highly aggressive, constant unga bunga, go in and smash character, although with Staff being added, more supportive options are now available. Spellbreaker. You know all that stuff I said about Warrior being boring? Well, this is the option for if you don't necessarily want to be boring. You just want everyone else's life to be boring. Spellbreaker has weaker access to adrenaline and burst than most other warriors. It has only 2 bars of adrenaline rather than the 3 most other warriors have, and its bursts will only ever utilize the 1 tier level version. It counters that by having the incredible Full Counter ability. Full Counter is a guard ability that utilizes one of your stores of adrenaline. It will completely counter an attack and then dish that damage that would have been done to you back at the enemy. This can do truly ludicrous amounts of damage to certain boss fights, and generally plays in a slightly more parry style. If you're very into Sekiro, you will like this character. Spellbreakers are built around a combination of mobility, boon stripping, and crowd control, and generally set abilities tend to combo with each other and in the character creation synergistically to massively pump up their damage. They generally punish characters for using certain abilities. Ranged characters can struggle to get away from them. Boon-reliant characters can have those boons stripped, and characters who are relatively weak against crowd control can be constantly knocked on their arse. I would probably say that the Spellbreaker has the highest skill ceiling of all the fighters. It's probably one of the funnest to play when you can get into it. Spellbreaker has access to daggers, mobile weapons, with access to boon strip and crowd control, generally fitting pretty well into their playstyle. Bladesworn. Remember how I said that Berserker had a ludicrous APM? I suspect it stole that from the Bladesworn. Bladesworn has several weird situations. First of all, it completely loses its adrenaline and burst mechanic, instead getting access to flow. Like adrenaline, flow is earned during combat. What you then do is utilize flow to go into something called a Dragon Slash, a special stance where you stand still holding your sword for a few seconds before unleashing a huge massive attack. This can be very devastating, but also slow and clunky. It's very easy to use, but can also be easily interrupted. As such, it has an incredibly low skill floor to be able to utilize, and a surprisingly high skill ceiling if you want to know when you use it in the best opportunities. Bladesworn also has a slightly unusual interaction with its weapons. It loses the ability to weapon swap in combat. In exchange, it gains access to a special gun saber weapon. This effectively means that it always has a secondary weapon as a gun saber. Gun sabers are basically like someone took a large katana and stuck a grenade launcher to it. I'm sure there are large amounts of weeb salivating at the concept. Jokes aside, it is actually a pretty solid weapon. It has some range capacity, but is first and foremost a melee weapon. All of its moves are also ammo skills, which interact with the blade Bladesworn's talents. Bladesworn also gain access to Pistol, which, believe it or not, is a melee weapon for the Warrior. Its abilities work by generating up ammo for its final ability, which in turn increases its power depending on the amount of ammo it has. Unlike most ammo skills, this does it multiple times, it burns all of its ammo at once. Many jokes about this came to mind, but all of them would probably get me kicked off YouTube. Due to the fact that Bladesworn tends to interact with ammo mechanics, which for the record are skills which have multiple uses before they go on to cooldown, it tends to be better off using pistols and rifles as its go-to weapon. So shockingly, the Gunsaber class wants to use guns. Well, that about wraps up for Warrior. Go and do what you people do with large heavy objects.